Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful February 12th. And to those that do celebrate, we just had the Lunar New Year, which happened on Saturday. So those that celebrate and those that don't, we just wish you a very happy New Year. May you have a healthy and prosperous New Year in 2024. Members of Council, there's the agenda before you. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council adopt February 12th, 2024 regular council meeting agenda as presented.
Thank you. Administration, anything to add to the agenda?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to public input session. This is the time that we allow residents and any stakeholders to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Is there anybody that has registered to speak?
Through Your Worship, no, there hasn't.
Thank you. Anybody in the gallery like to speak to council on anything that's not on the current agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Number 4 of our agenda is presentations and delegations. We have nothing scheduled for tonight. So moving on to number 5, and number 5 is a statutory public hearing on Westera Stage 18 for the land use bylaw amendment. Okay. All right, so this is a public hearing for land use, so there are certain rules that we follow. Everything is addressed to me as the chair. I will call the hearing to order. First up is the applicant our administration gets to present. Council gets to ask questions for clarity and understanding. Then the applicant gets to make a presentation. And then council gets to ask questions of clarity and understanding. Then all those that are in favor of the proposed bylaw change gets the opportunity to speak. And then after that, then it's everybody that is opposed to the bylaw amendment gets to speak. And then after that, then all those that have a general comment. And during all those times, council has the opportunity to ask for questions of clarity and understanding. And after that, the applicant gets to summarize if they choose. And when that is completed, then the public hearing is closed. Okay, so with that, I'll call the public hearing for bylaw 2683 L/LUO/24, Westera Stage H18 to start. Go ahead, Administration.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm introducing Caitlin McDonald. She's our planning intern, and she'll be giving the presentation for the public hearing for bylaw 2683 LUO/24.
Thank you. Good evening. Hello, this evening I will be bringing forward for public hearing bylaw 2683 LUO/24. This bylaw is a land use bylaw amendment consisting of 2 parts, a redistricting of the subject site as well as an amendment to the 0 lot line map. So this is the Stony Plain land use planning framework. As this bylaw is a land use bylaw amendment, it takes place within the second most detailed stage, the land development stage, which deals with items such as the land use bylaw, subdivisions, and land servicing. So after first reading was given, the public hearing was advertised in accordance with the public advertisement bylaw through a notice sign placed on the site, as well as a post on the town website. This file was also brought to the Planning Advisory Committee for their feedback. So these photos demonstrate the notice sign, which was installed on the subject site along Westera Drive on January 11th, 2024. So this is the Westera Estates Area Structure Plan Development Concept Map, demonstrating the land use patterns set out for the area. The subject of this reading is within the southwest area of the map, which has identified the land use as low density. This map also acknowledges a natural wetland area in the southwest, as well as an area for parks and open space. So this map shows the aerial context for the proposed Westera Stage 18 redistricting in the red hatched area, as well as the surrounding build-out of the Lake Westera Estates neighborhood. To the north, in the grayed out area here, let me just turn on my laser pointer. In this grayed out area here is Westera Stage 17 along Westera Wind. And Westera Stage 18 will be a continuation of that development progressing south, so just here in this red hatched area. The development extent of Westera 18 also covers some of the natural area or wetland to the southwest, which the developer has sought provincial approval for. A portion of the wetland will be dedicated at future stages of this development as environmental reserve. This shadow plan demonstrates the context of the surrounding Westera neighborhood as well as future stages of development that will take place. So Westera 18 is continuing down from Westera Wine to the north here. And it's curving east to connect with Westera Bend here on the south. The shadow plan also demonstrates the proposed trail layout for future stages of development, shown through the red circles to the west, which will continue the existing trail connections in Westera. So this map demonstrates the proposed redistricting for the lots in Westera 18. The proposed land use bylaw districting consists of a redistricting from future development to 4 districts. Future development to R5, small lot, mixed form residential district, which provides for a mix of low-density dwellings on compact lots. Future development to R2, detached dwelling district, which provides for detached dwellings. The R2 lots are proposed for the southeastern tip of this stage and will cap off the development of Westera Avenue and Westera Bend. Future development to P1, Parks District, which provides land for active and passive recreational use. This land is intended to be dedicated as environmental reserve to serve as a buffer to the wetland with a wide enough berth to allow for town maintenance. And finally, future development to P3, Utility District, which provides land for major utilities. This land will be used to connect the drainage path from the wetland to the northern drainage site seen up here. As this map demonstrates, some of the areas proposed to be redistricted to R5 also propose a 0 lot line overlay, as seen with this dotted layer here. So this map demonstrates the previously approved 0 lot line area represented as the hatched lines here. In Westera 17 to the north, which is in this grayed out area, so the hatched lines within the grayed out area has already been approved in Westera 17. And here on the south side is the proposed 0 lot line areas in Westera 18. So there are currently 40 0 lot line approved lots in Stony Plain, with 11 of those 0 lot line lots in Westera 17 to the north. Westera 18 is proposing to continue the 0 lot line development on the eastern side of Westera Wind, seen here. So we're here now on February 12th for the public hearing. After public hearing, we have a bylaw lead sheet that proposes to give the second and third reading at council's discretion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Councilor Lowry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Just for clarity, you stated there was 40 0 lot lines previously approved in Stony Plain, with 11 being in Westera 17. Can you refresh my memory? How many are being proposed in Westera 18?
Through your worship to Councillor Lowry, there are 20 0 lot line lots being proposed for Westera 18.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for clarity and understanding? Councilor Hansard?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just trying to get some clarification. Do we not have another project, like a trial project, or that we have already approved 0 lot lines that is supposed to be built or is maybe in the process of being built? And if so, where, please?
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, in terms of a pilot project for 0 lot lines, I know this is one item that came up when we were first bringing the new regulations for 0 lot lines in front of council. At the time, no specific pilot, I would say, depending on your definition of the pilot, was brought forward. However, the approach that was taken was an overlay, as noted by Ms. McDonald, was established by council to indicate what areas could, and therefore had council's blessing to allow 0 lot lines. As part of that, administration is reviewing and looking over and monitoring kind of the operation and maintenance of those areas and any enforcement matters as they come online. To date, there has been no approved 0 lot line development. I can say, however, that right now there is one permit that has been applied for in Westera Stage 17. So really our first one that would be monitored through our enforcement mechanisms is basically just posed, I would say, for this spring.
Okay. Further to that. further to that, Mr. Dibble, when we have approved as council a pilot project, but it hasn't yet been built, what is the purpose of designating a new type of build as a pilot project?
Okay, I think the conversation was that it's not a pilot project.
This one is not.
No, it is zoning that council has allowed when we redid our land use bylaw, but council wanted to maintain and monitor to see where they're existing and where they've been improved. So there's nothing about a pilot project. It is 100% approved.
Okay, if I may, I'd like to just get clarification. Have we built any zero lot line homes in Stony Plain at this time?
Through your worship to Councillor Hanser, no zero lot line houses have been built to date.
Would this be, Mr. Dibble, the first building of zero lot line homes? What we're talking about here?
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, this would not be the first, in terms of, just for clarity, in terms of the bylaw before you in West Terra Stage 18, this would not be the first area that is proposed for zero lot lines. This would be the third area. South Creek Stage 5 and West Terra Stage 17 were the first two.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, clarity, understanding? Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at, sorry, I just lost my page here. Page 48, it looks like, of our agenda package here. The title here at the top is Water Act Approval, not where my question is going, but we have two reserve areas indicated on the map. One's listed as environmental reserve, one being listed toward the left side there in yellow as municipal reserve. Just looking for administration to provide some clarity on how these are allocated. How do we determine what's coming back to the municipality as municipal reserve? How are environmental reserves considered in the planning process? I see here both are listed as proposed, so just looking for some clarity.
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, the difference between municipal reserve and environmental reserve is more considered on developable land. So these are typically areas that are either water inundated, have poor soils, steep slopes, things like that are difficult to develop. They come out prior to, in terms of the calculation for municipal reserve, which is 10% of the developable land. So again, you take the gross land area, you subtract the environmental reserve, and then of that amount, 10% is able to be taken by the municipality as park space or as municipal reserve.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the clarity there, in specific to the allocation coming out prior to the municipal reserve allocation. Just further to that, when that 10% is allocated as municipal reserve, is that at the decision or the purview, I guess, of the developer? Or is that something that is discussed and negotiated with the town in terms of consideration being given to our parks and open spaces planning and so on?
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, it's a little bit of both. So at the higher level, policies, again, are put in place through the MDP, area structure plans, area redevelopment plans, as well as some administrative documents, as you noted, such as the open space or Parks and Open Space Master Plan. So it's through a variety of those different documents that when it comes to the subdivision, that's specifically when the municipal reserve land would be allocated. Again, it's something where administratively we do look at those policy documents for guidance in terms of what would be acceptable. Also looking at things such as our standards and other applications that we would use as tools. And then again, depending on what sort of subdivision comes forth, we would work with the developer to ensure that it meets those policy documents.
Yeah, thank you again for the clarity there. Just a quick comment, I guess, and sort of some personal thoughts here. But in the couple of years that I've been involved on council, we've seen a number of these subdivisions come through. And one of the things that I've noted is that it almost appears that what is designated for MR is often kind of a little sliver of land here, a piece of land there. there's a part of me that says, yeah, you know, we certainly have advocated for our trail system and active living, and that does allow for that to happen. But we've also had conversations recently at strategic planning about the importance of prioritizing parks and open spaces and having those amenities available in our community. With this being a proposed zero lot line development, we're, you know, condensing more people or more homes into that area. Certainly want to see that we prioritize the green space for the residents that will eventually call these areas home. And so, you know, certainly, you know, just a comment for now, but, you know, I'm interested to see how the intention behind our parks and open space plan, the intention behind our active living prioritization as a community, and these sorts of things starts to flesh out. Because as I look at the map here, certainly we have some space around the school. Certainly there's the ice rink there across West Terra Drive, but in this stage 17, 18 that we're looking at, we are looking at, you know, a few pathways and some environmental reserve, which doesn't leave a lot for that sort of spontaneous and free play for the residents that live there. So just some thoughts today. Thanks.
Councillor Loyens, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. To you through administration, just for clarification, when West Terra Stage 17 had come to us, there was a lot of questions and concerns about the wildlife and the birds and things like that. And when I look at West Terra Stage 18 and I only see it as proposed environmental reserve, again, the question becomes, being that that is the one area of wetland that was brought as a huge concern, what would be happening with that area? Is there an environmental study done on the animals in that area?
Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Loyens, I just ask if Ms. McDonald could go back a couple slides here. Yeah, go back just forward one, actually. So if we look on this one here, you'll see the shadow plan here indicates that the area where the wetland is, which is just to the, sort of the west of the red area, is outlined. It's not noted specifically on here, but basically the area that Ms. McDonald kind of highlighted there is proposed as an environmental reserve area. Again, given the fact that the area to the north of that environmental reserve is still a little bit to be determined, depending on the soil and whatnot, when they get into that area. We have not had the developer dedicate that space as an environmental reserve at this time. But again, the intent is that as they develop the area to the north of that, that upon that, they would dedicate it as environmental reserve, which the little strip kind of to the north and the west between there and the highway would be additional municipal reserve.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to follow sort of a similar line. In the presentation, it was mentioned that the applicant had made an application for an environmental study. I'm curious if you could just describe what that involves. Have they received, you know, if it's an application, have they received approval?
Through your worship to Councillor Meyer, the application I believe that was mentioned could be one of two things. So one, there's Water Act approval, so any changes to a water course are similar to that, similar to here where you've got the channeling of the water that comes out of the wetland, the P3 would be part of that. So that would be required prior to developing with or changing that water body. Any changes to that would require Water Act approval from that standpoint. The other one, which might be more specifically to what you're getting at, is a wetland approval. So basically, the developer or any developer would have to hire a specialist with aquatics and ecosystems who would basically delineate the different types of wetlands through a report, and then the outcome of that report is submitted to Alberta Environment and Parks. They review that, and then typically there would be sort of a wetland compensation given for any wetlands that would be developed within, but it's also used to give that formal wetland approval is once that wetland study has been completed by a consultant on behalf of the developer.
Anything else?
Just a follow-up to that. So in terms of the wetland application, does that seek approval to build on the wetland, or does it delineate it as like environmental reserve? Good.
Through your worship to Councillor Meyer, it does both. So again, the study itself delineates where it is, and then depending on the intention of the developer to develop any of that land, it would specify that compensation. The developer may have additional information when they're able to speak and present as well.
Good. Yeah, anything else? Good. Councillor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to administration. Looking for a bit of clarity. I went back and watched actually the February 27th of 2023 meeting that originally took place on stage 17. And there's a number of questions that I have, so I want to, if I'm out of line, you can maybe move this towards the debate, but it's not really. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for clarity. At that point in time, the developer was very specific with us on the number of big lots within the town that were being not accessible to our potential client base. At that point in time, we talked about two different things. One, we talked about trial projects, pilot projects, stuff like that. You referred to something different today, but it was very distinct in our previous meetings as to where council sat with projects of something new to be tried within our town, and we give 2 areas to do it. I'm just wondering if you can clarify today, we approved 2 projects, one in South Creek and one in Stage 17 in West Terra. Can you tell me, of the lots that they had in town prior to that, how many of those lots have sold, and how many of the new lots that we approved at that point in time have sold?
Go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, I don't have the specific number of lots that have sold at this point in time, other than I can note that both West Terra Stage 17 has been subdivided and is currently just going through basically the initial permitting phase for some of the lots within there. Again, there's the one that I had noted earlier that would be the first 0 lot line that would start to be developed, assuming the permit is issued in the coming weeks. In terms of South Creek Stage 5, it has not been subdivided at this point in time, so none of those lots have been put on at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll have more later now.
Right, any other questions for clarity and understanding? Just a question for clarity from administration. When the presentation was going on, the 0 lot lines are currently on the west side of the road coming down. Now they're proposed to be on the east side of the road for stage 18. Is there a particular reason why that flip?
Through your worship, this is one that, if possible, I would like to defer to the developer because it is their application and they would know better than I would. Again, I have some assumptions, which I think I mentioned a little bit at the first reading, but I would like to leave this for the developer to answer if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for clarity and understanding for our administration? Okay, seeing none, I'll end the presentation from our administration. Moving on to the next phase is the presentation from the applicant. So if the applicant can come down, there's 2 seats there. Again, please sign in and then speak directly into the mics. Just kind of pull it towards your mouth and then speak. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Christine Lee, and I am a project coordinator here at Qualico Communities, and I will be presenting in support of our West Terra Stage 18 redistricting application. So a little bit of background. Qualico has been developing in the West Terra neighborhood for nearly 2 decades, and we are now planning our final few stages in the neighborhood. and the southwest portion specifically. So stage 18 is highlighted in orange and is located directly south of stage 17, which was serviced and registered just late last year. While there are no houses currently built on stage 17 at this time, our builders are working through the permitting process to ensure that our approvals are ready for construction in the spring. And with the recent increase in new home sales in the region and immigration levels expected to remain high, we are planning this next stage of development to ensure that we do have adequate supply of new lots in the Westera neighborhood. This stage will also complete the Westera Bend Loop just south of Westera Drive. In this stage, we are proposing to continue the R5 district from north to south. We also plan to cap off the ends of the existing blocks at Westera Bend and Westera Avenue with the R2 district, which is consistent with the adjacent portions of these blocks. We have also applied the zero lot line overlay to the eastern and southern blocks to bring more diverse housing options to the area. On the west side of this stage, we have applied a strip of P1 Parks District to accommodate for a buffer between the back of lots and the wetland area. We have also applied a small strip of P3, which is the utility district, to accommodate for the remaining portion of the overland drainage ditch that is from the north side of the wetland. In terms of housing diversity, we are proposing a different mix of housing types and price options from Westera Stage 17. So Stage 17 consisted of front drives, semi-detached lots, as well as zero lot line amenity lots that back onto a green space. And over half of the approved zero lot lines in Westera Stage 17 currently have been allocated to our builders, with spec homes are expected to be under construction this spring. Stage 18 will provide a slightly different but complementary options to Stage 17. It will have standard front drive, single detached amenity lots backing the wetland, and the zero lot lines will continue just south of the semi-detached block in blue from Stage 17. The decision for the developer, or for us, to alternate the zero lot line overlay from the west side to the east side of the road is to be able to provide a variety of different housing options and price points, both for amenity and non-amenity lots, for the future residents of the neighborhood. And in terms of open space connectivity, Westera Stage 18 is well connected to green spaces and the trail network in the neighborhood. That includes Westera Park to the north, that includes the skating rink and other programming, as well as trail connections to Memorial Composite High School, which is to the east. There is also an existing wetland located directly west of our proposed stage, which we do intend to preserve the majority of. And so with respect to this wetland, Qualico did receive Water Act approvals from the provincial government in November of 2022. This will allow us to disturb and remove portions of the outer edges, which you see there in red, to accommodate for future development. As part of this approval, we are required to pay compensation fees to the Alberta Environment and Parks, and we must also meet certain conditions related to restoration and monitoring of any of the areas that are temporarily disturbed, highlighted in pink. Overall, the majority of the wetland is to remain undisturbed and will be dedicated as environmental reserve with our future stages. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak today. Jamie and I will be here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Members of Council, some questions for clarity and understanding. Councillor Hansard, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to our guests, I would like to have a little clarification on the last thing you just touched on. When you say you're going to disturb the wetland, mostly on the outer edges, can you clarify the purpose of that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hansard, based on the existing layout of the lots to the east and the amount of depth required for a typical block and the roadway, we're forced to remove a portion of the wetland, that being the area in red, to accommodate the depth of the blocks on that piece. And then on the north side, so we've done some geotechnical analysis on this to understand the soils and exactly what this wetland is composed of. And on the north side, in order to sort of configure a more, I guess, a more straight block just to the north of it, we've gone ahead and applied and received approval from the province to remove that bit on the north to accommodate future development. And so again, what we have to do for that process is we had our consultants, being Stantec, their biology team, come out here. They do what's called a wetland assessment to determine the classification of the wetland, the ecology, any wildlife habitat and biodiversity. And then any portions that are proposed to be disturbed, if the province permits that, you have to go through a process of again, delineating that, exactly what could be disturbed. You pay, the province requires that you pay compensation, which then they will utilize to either restore other wetlands or create, larger wetlands in areas based on, several factors. And then once you receive that approval, essentially the province has authorized that and considered it to be developable now and not part of that wetland.
Further to that.
Go ahead, Councilor Hanser.
Thank you, Your Worship. The more we hear, the more questions I have. So we disturb the land in Stony Plain, we disturb this wetland, and compensation is paid to the province, but the money does not come back to enhance anything water-related in Stony Plain. It goes wherever they wish to put it. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hansard, wetlands are under the jurisdiction of the province, right? So the province determines whether or not it will claim that wetland, what the classification of that wetland might be, and other further considerations, such as whether the whole thing can be developed or portions of it. And so through consultation, with the province, with the town, or with administration and with our biologists, also in the context of the ASP, what we're doing here is I believe we're achieving the intent of what the ASP has shown in terms of preservation of this wetland, but also the provincial requirements and their assessment of this as well.
Okay. Further, thank you, Your Worship. So it's my understanding from sitting in one of these seats over a number of years that Stony Plain receives a lot of water from quarter sections south of us. And the water moves through Stony Plain, a lot of it through our streams and so forth, but there's other areas like this where things just sort of stay wet and the birds come and all of that. So was there any kind of information available to you all as the developers to what kind of birds are there? And is the restoration of this going to in any way enhance the wetlands that remain? Because now it's right up there in the residential area so that people can observe the birds. David Foote, an author of Boom, Bust, and Echo a number of years ago, identified birding, he called it, as the #1 pastime in North America, and that is bird watching, bird feeding, bird hunting, bird tracking, all of those things. Will any of that be available for those bird species that normally would habitate in that area at least part-time of the year? And does it then become more or less an amenity by the time you get through restoring and putting back what needs to be put back? Will this be a usable space for such activities that fall under the title birding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hansard. In terms of the bird habitat, so we did do what's called a bird sweep, and again, the biologists were on site to identify species. And yeah, I mean, yes, there is some bird habitat there. It's a wetland with a huge treat area to the south. No doubt about it. There's definitely, a variety of birds. The recommendation from the biologists was not to allow for trails directly between the houses, the back of the houses, and the wetland. It was to discourage people from entering the wetland, from letting their dogs go running through it. But again, through the plan here, what we're showing is the space between the wetland and the highway. The intent is to provide a trail connection to that and have some, seating areas or things like that where people can, bird watch or just relax.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. And so I'm just going to take some of the terminology that you used, and I'm just going to bring it down to layman's terms to make sure that I've got some understanding. So you talked about the causation for the switch from the east side to the west side for the zero lot line. You called it amenity lots. And so when you go into layman's terms and looking at it, you're essentially saying that you're looking at providing a variety of lots in having some more affordable zero lot line lots that do not back onto amenity, that amenity being the wetland. Is that a correct understanding of that? So you have some zero lot line lots currently in 17 that back onto the wetland that essentially do not have a rear neighbor. And then you're now proposing to have zero lot line lots that would be less that amenity because they would have a rear neighbor. Is that a simplistic way of understanding it?
Through you, Mayor Choi, that is correct.
Okay, and so then for clarity in looking at it, the lot diversity that you spoke of, currently with stage 17, we have, as is called semi-detached, layman's terms is the duplex product. So we have a duplex product in there, we have zero lot line front drive. Now you're adding in the front drive single detached, so again, no zero lot line, no duplex, a single standalone detached lot. That's the addition of the R5 on the west side, correct?
That's correct.
Excellent. And then this might be a question more so for our administration than yourselves. In regards to the Water Act approval, would that be something similar as to what the town and the city of Spruce Grove were required to go through in relation to the trail connection along Highway 16A that is currently being constructed?
Go ahead.
Through your worship, through your worship to Councillor Laurie, it is a similar process though that would have to be followed. There are the level of detail that's required from the applicant today, given the level of disturbance, is it's the same process but a little bit more in depth. The trail project that you're referencing, we were I can't remember the exact term, but it was within the fringes of the wetland. So there were the same process, different requirements to make sure we were upheld to. What the applicant is bringing up is a deeper process than what the town had to go through with the city of Spruce Grove.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And again, just for clarity on that, it's then not necessarily uncommon to have Water Act approvals required for different development projects, whether it be housing development, whether it be trails, any of those type of things.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Sorry, and I apologize, I may have missed it in the conversation. You have received approval of this application?
Yes, I think it's signified on page 48 of our agenda package, where it shows the permit disturbance, the temporary disturbance.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilor Pleshko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to Jamie and Christine, is that what I heard correct?
That is correct.
Thanks for your presentation this evening, and I've got a couple of questions. The first one is related to the two stages, so stage 17, and we're going to talk about Stony Creek a tiny bit, if you could clarify for that. When I went back and watched our February 27th, 2023 meeting, which was a very long one, there was a number of things that were brought to light that Qualico felt that this community needed. So as I drive around town, I see nothing happening in Stony Creek, which has me greatly concerned for an area that we approved, and I think it was 26 or 27 units for that local area. And you talked about this unit, and I understand that it was only 11 units for this area, yet you make mention to a number of new builds coming up. I'm wondering if you can speak to that, because to my knowledge, and from what we've heard from administration tonight, we have only got one permit applied for in that area. And secondly, I asked administration earlier regarding the number of homes you talked about. You had trouble selling the lots, and I could pull that up and be very specific to the lots, but I think you know what I'm talking about. If you could answer to me, how many of those lots sold almost immediately thereafter this stage come up?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Palechko, I'll try and answer these in the order you asked them. Looking at the number of lots that are the existing larger lots in Westera that haven't sold, we're still unfortunately sitting on a number of those lots. So I did a count today, and if we look north of Westera Drive, I could bring it up on our own website here, but if we look north of Westera Drive in that ring around the park there, there's still a total of 17 larger lots in that area available, and they're ranging from 26-foot wide to 34-foot wide pockets. That hasn't changed that much from last year. Now, when we're going down to Stage 17, however, the reason that we haven't seen any sales in Stage 17 or any houses being built is we just received our planning approvals last spring for that. So after planning, we have to engineer it. Then we have to do all of the civil construction. So we had to put in the pipes, the roads. That we just received. We actually weren't able to receive what's called our construction completion certificate at the end of the season because the street lights weren't lit up yet. And so by the time that just happened over the last couple of weeks, and based on the town's process, builders aren't able to submit permits until you have all of those things in place. So that's why, as Mr. Dibble mentioned, permits are just starting to come in now, because over the last week, we've sort of finalized that process and are now able to move on to the next one. But what seems to be happening in the market right now is it's more of a spec house market than a custom or buyers buying a lot and then finding a builder and building a house. And part of it is because construction costs have been all over the place in the last few years, and part of it is due to interest rates and the anticipation of them potentially coming down, right? And so buyers don't want to lock themselves into something if they might not be able to get into that house for 6 months or 8 months or a little longer. And so they're waiting for a spec home to be ready to suit their needs when they're ready to buy. So we expect, as Christine mentioned, we have 6 of these lots, 6 of those 11 lots are allocated to builders who already have one has a permit application in, but the others are working through them because we see them before they go to the town as well. And those are all in the process, and hopefully, we'll see some of those houses being built in the spring and people moving into them later this year. Now, what we're planning for in Stage 18 is not that we're going to have houses built this year, but to be able to potentially start construction this year, by the end of this year, or early next year for the civil work, and then following that, you're going to have houses again. So you might not see houses in Stage 18 until, mid to late 2025 or even 2026. So that's sort of, in terms of timelines, how far ahead we have to plan. Now, your question about South Creek and why we haven't seen anything there. South Creek was a little bit challenging, and part of it is because of the second access requirement that had been discussed a number of times. And so if you, I don't have it up here, but if you recall, stage 5 started to kind of go on the west side of the pond from north to south. And as we got further into our budgeting and we're understanding the costs associated with that second access back to Veterans Boulevard, we were realizing that it just, the numbers weren't working for us there. And so we had to basically last year ended up almost being a write-off for that stage. We weren't able to proceed. But this year, we're planning on going ahead with stage 4B, which was the other stage that was previously approved north of the pond. So that stage didn't include any zero lot line lots, and if that goes ahead, which we're working on our budget right now, we expect that the zero lot line stage wouldn't be coming on for a few more years until we can work through some of those cost challenges with building that second access. So I think, to answer your question, what we're proposing here is something that is different than what we're planning on building in South Creek this year, and we feel it will provide that variety that Christine mentioned in the presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Follow up? We're good.
No, I really appreciate that. As I said, I went back and watched the 27th February meeting that we had here on those two developments specifically, and I know it's been an open discussion with some of the community residents that I talk to on a regular basis as to why you haven't moved ahead with some of the stuff that we had talked about. They all kind of feel that it's important that we take little steps when we're approving developments, especially when we were very cautious up here. I think I heard everyone in council here talk about wanting to see some new stuff in town, but also being very cautious as to how we did that. So I do appreciate that. And, just a bit of a follow-up, Stage 18 really is a follow-through of the rest of the subdivision. Would have been nice to see it all at the one time. Would have been a lot clearer for a lot of the residents in that area as well, which would have eliminated a lot of questions. So I appreciate that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for clear understanding? Okay. See none. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. Okay. We'll move on to our next phase of the public hearing. So those are all that are in favor of the proposed land use bylaw amendment can now come forward and speak. Okay. All those in favor of the land use bylaw amendment change? Seeing none, move on to the next phase, which is all those that are opposed to the proposed land use bylaw amendment change. Okay. All those that are opposed to the land use amendment change. Okay. Moving on to the third phase, which allows anybody to provide any general comment to the amendments to the land use bylaw. Okay. Anybody in chambers like to speak a general comment about the land use change? Okay. See none, I'll end that public input session. Moving back to the applicant, would you like to add anything additional comments? Okay. See none. Just double checking with the administration. The process for the public hearing, did we adhere to the MGA rules and follow enough guidelines to make sure that works?
Through your worship, yes, you did.
Okay. Okay, with that, then I'll declare the public hearing for West Terrace Stage 18 land use bylaw amendment, LUO slash 23/24. Yep. Sorry, that is bylaw 2683/LUO/24. That is closed. Thank you. And those that are watching and those that are listening in the gallery, we will be dealing with this under our business items under number 8 of our agenda. So that'll be later on tonight if you want to stick around. Thank you. Okay, council, moving on with our agenda, moving on to number 6, which is the adoption of council minutes. And these are from the RCM of January 22nd. Councilor Laurie, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move that Town Council approve the January 22nd, 2024 regular council meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you. Members of council, you had the opportunity to read them. Any errors or omissions on those minutes? Councilor Hansard, go ahead.
Your Worship, I had it written down in my briefcase, but I didn't get it out. The section that speaks on, that's not our minute. Do we have in our minutes covering the Meridian Housing Foundation? And there are three items listed there. I don't know if that's the minutes or not.
Yes.
It's
Councilor.
recorded as Meridian House Foundation. It should be corrected to Meridian Housing Foundation.
That is correct, and that is on page 51 of 365, and that's item number 7. Thank you, Councilor Hansard, for catching that. Any other errors and omissions? Questions? All right, with that correction, so the motion is now as amended. Councilor Laurie, you okay with that? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, moving on to number 7, which is council boards and committee minutes. We're looking at 7.1, which is the subdivision appeal board from July 13th, and also 7.2, which is the Meridian Housing Foundation special board meeting for January 5th. Councilor Moynes.
Town council received the council board and committee minutes for information.
Okay, members of council, again, you've had the opportunity to read it. Any questions or comments regarding those minutes? See none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, moving on to number 8, which is now looking at bylaws, and we'll be dealing with 8.1, which is the West Terra Stage 18 land use bylaw amendment. Administration, go ahead. Anything to add?
Thank you for the opportunity, Your Worship. Administration has nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Administration, Council, does any have any questions for clear understanding to administration before we start? Okay, seeing none, I will need a motion. Councilor Plechko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The Town Council will give second reading to bylaw 2683 LUO 24 to amend land use bylaw 2671 LUO 23.
Okay, thank you. The motion is accepted, so now we can open up for comments, questions, and debate on the motion. Members of council? Councilor Hansard?
Your Worship, I'm trying to just clarify how I'm going to approach this. For those who are watching online and those in council chambers, I've done reflection on this, and I must say I was very happy to see something come in our council package where we actually have a well-known builder in the area who's willing to move forward with another stage in a neighborhood, and we're hoping that one day soon we'll see that complete build-out of that neighborhood that we know as West Terra. I'll even say lovingly as West Terra. There are so many communities across North America that in many ways are still reeling from the negative effects and the shutdowns and everything, the market, the high cost of goods that came about as a result of COVID. And I promised myself that I would do my best not to use that word in 2024, and then here I am. We're not even through the month of February, and I have to use it. But there was such a hit in so many ways on the marketplace and on communities that know full well that we are in a high-growth priority area and that we will grow. The only question is, how will we grow? And how well will we manage that growth? Because there are many communities, as a realtor, I go into them and I sell homes in them, And I'm thinking they didn't do a very good job here in how they decided what would get built where, and what kinds of homes get built by what kinds of homes. And when we have someone with a long-time reputation, not just in our community, but in the entire capital region, if not the province, who shows over and over and over again that they can build quality homes that stand for years with good maintenance and will continue to serve family after family after family, I think that is something for us to be very happy about. I always think along the lines of what I thought some of the questioning earlier was leaning toward, and that is, why are we talking about creating a new piece of a subdivision and allowing building when we haven't built out what we've already approved and set aside time for? And I certainly do appreciate that bringing a new product, which is really what the zero lot line product line will be, on board means that we have to do things in a certain order. Thank goodness Stony Plain is one of those communities that wants things done in a certain way with the underground infrastructure, the streets, the curbing, the lights in place before we start issuing permits to build. We do have a project that was built here in Stony Plain, started in Stony Plain, that didn't follow those guidelines, and it turned out to be a thorn in our side in many ways. So I'm very glad to see that our planning department and the builders, developers, are working together to make sure we do things in the right way. I'm hoping that now that this stage 17 will allow the movement forward for us to actually see what happens when the new zero lot line homes are built, and how the neighborhood reacts and the traffic flows, and how children live and families raise themselves and enjoy living and breathing, moving, working, and playing here. So this counselor would be anxious to see the beginning, and will be watching carefully over the next few years as the developer goes forward to build out this project, and hopefully that we see new families moving to Stony Plain who will share in our overall tax requirement to keep our municipality running with terrific services for everyone and terrific amenities for everyone. So as much work as it is and all the money that has to go into a project and under the ground before people ever begin to see anything put together in the form of sticks and stones and nails and screws and trucks delivering goods, I just want to say that I appreciate the work that goes into the planning, because without good planning, we don't have well-designed, well-run, well-built neighborhoods, and that's what we want here in Stony Plain. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to voice that opinion. I'm glad to see we passed stage 1 so we could discover a lot of information, and stage 2 motion is on the table. And thank you for that.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Hansard. Moving on to Councillor Pletchko.
Yes, thank you, Worship. And I'm looking for some clarification from what I just heard Councillor Hansard speak to. My understanding is that Qualico is actually a developer of the land. There is actually, they build the land up to sell to home builders who then build the quality homes. Does Qualico actually build homes in their developments?
Through your worship to Councillor Pletchko, you may want to ask more directly, but I guess what I can say is that I do believe Qualico is at least associated with several builders and external ones. I don't know sure exactly what relationship they have, but there's definitely some that are linked, I think, directly to Qualico as the land developer. But again, there's a variety there. So yes, as far as I know.
Okay, thank you.
Administration, is there anybody else that could answer that for specifics as to who that builder would be?
I would say the answer is yes. Through my time sitting around this table, Qualco has partnered with many builders that have built out West Terra stages from 1 till right now. Off the top of my head, would probably be, I think, Sterling was one of them that was partnered, that I've seen a lot. And there's a couple other ones, but those are affiliates of the overall company and not the actual land developer itself. So Qualco, as have you mentioned, and by our staff, Qualco is the land developer of the land, but not the actual builder of houses. But they do have partnerships with builders that will build these houses.
Thank you. That's clarification I was looking for, because my understanding was that they were the developers. So thank you for that clarification. So having said that, over the years that I've been in Stony Plain, I want to appreciate that Qualico does bring good quality product to the land for our community, which gives our local builders the opportunity to build good quality homes within our community. And I think that's what's important when we look at our development within our community. And I also think it's important that we look to the future of the needs of what may come from the community and not what has happened in the past. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll move over to Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment to Councillor Palechko there, just pulling up Qualico's website. They do list a number of home builders, 2 of which are listed as their own companies, and that is Pacesetter Homes and Sterling Homes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions and comments and debate on the motion? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So I want to hone on 2, well, a number of things, but we'll start with, I think certainly my fellow councillor Hansard spoke earlier to a trial and a trial version of this, and I think one of my other councillors also mentioned it, going through the old video to sort of confirm, and I'm glad to know that I remembered it similarly. I do, like I say, want to kind of hone in on unfortunate sort of circumstances for Qualico, and I do appreciate Qualico as a quality community building partner. I want them to do well in this community, like my fellow councillors, but in the same breath, I think it's also our job to make sure that it's done right. And so, unfortunately, South Creek didn't quite work out as planned, and that's delayed that project that we did approve. And then there seems to be some unfortunate permitting. I'm not quite sure how it worked out, but the lighting wasn't lit up, and so the permit didn't get approved, which I think is an unfortunate thing, and hopefully our planning and development can help our builders and developers in our community work through those things. But considering their long history in our community, it strikes me as a little odd that that they were surprised by this. And so just because a business fails to do their homework, I don't see why our community should be rushed into approving something that I think, like I say, from last meeting, I think I left that meeting thinking this was the trial version of it. And we were going to wait and see kind of perspective. And so while I understand why the developers here looking for the next stage of their project, and that's fine, and I can even understand sort of administrations having gone through the process once, kind of thinking that that's we're going forward, but unless I hear something different from my fellow councillors, I'm kind of leaning towards not being rushed into this. And so that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Deputy Mayor. And just to provide some clarity, I think Councillor Anderson mentioned that on the website does list, I think, 6 builders, and then 2 of them were part of Qualico companies, and that was Sterling Homes and Pacesetter. So to be fair to the other companies that are listed on there, there's Montero Homes, there's Sindhu Homes, there's Coventry Homes, and Alpin Homes. Okay, any other questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Councillor Lowry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'm kind of listening to some of the comments that have gone across, and I know, again, without going back and watching the video and picking specific words, I think my understanding of more what we were doing is the land use bylaw allows council to approve this in various areas. It does not state that we are limited to the number that we may approve, we're limited to the areas where we may approve. It's just simply that in order for it to go ahead, it has to come back to council to approve. I also know one of the major concerns that I noted when this stage 17 came through was that it was not a complete connection and it was a deadhead road. And therefore access, when we're talking about zero lot lines, when there was some public concern about emergency access, access was limited to one access. Whereas this is actually what I would have liked to have seen when this first came forward to council, because this provides a contiguous access through Westera Drive, Avenue, and Bend. And so it's providing that multi-access. Again, when this first came forward, it was 11 zero lot lines that didn't even back on to any additional development. So I felt that it was a pretty weak opportunity prior to even consider the impact of those 11 homes, because it really wasn't a large enough sample size. To me, what I'm seeing in front of me today completes what I would have liked to see when this first came in front of council. It gives a complete street from top to bottom. It's a total of about 70 lots, 31 of which are zero lot line. Sorry, it might be a little less than 70, 20, 51, 66, 68. 68 lots, 31 are zero lot line. So less than 50% are zero lot line. Some of them back on to amenity, as we heard earlier, some of them back on to existing residential, and it's in an area. The map that was referred to earlier, looking at that, it's already got 50% of the lots in stage 17, that are accounted for pre-builds as spec or designated to home builders already. So we have less than 50% of the lots that came online in stage 17 that are even really going to be available for new builds, for custom, for people to actually take a product and say, hey, I want this, this, and this in it. It's either spec home, like we heard, is something that's seemingly more popular at this point in time. And so I'm excited to have this before us, and I'm fully supportive of this, because really, in my opinion, this is not a new development. This is not a brand new ask. This is a completion of a street. And it's giving us a good sample size. I'm disappointed, but not surprised to hear what we heard in regards to South Creek today. I think we knew that when we had that come forward to us. We knew that there would be some challenges with secondary access, and I appreciate Qualico doing the due diligence and making sure that they understand how that's going to impact them. And I appreciate that they have, I think it was stage 4B, if I remember hearing it correctly, that was already approved, that's ready to go, and that they've pivoted and they've decided to go forward. But we heard that now that's going to delay 29 of the zero lot line product in South Creek for many, many years. So if we are looking for a sample size, if we are looking to try and understand how this is going to exist in this community, we know stage 17 is already underway. With stage 18 being proposed, we heard again today the likelihood is the actual infrastructure development will be done within probably the next 12 to 18 months, maybe a little more. And that will give us, what was my total here, 31. That'll give us 31 potential zero lot line lots to then start understanding how that functions in our community. The last comment I'll make on it, again, this is something I fully support because it goes all the way back to our housing strategy. And this is what we continue to hear across this country, across this province, in the metro region. We hear it. We hear about housing stock, we hear about supply, we hear not necessarily about affordable housing, but attainable housing. And while the zero lot line product may not be something that individuals such as ourselves or others may choose to live in, there are plenty of people who would like attainable home ownership, and zero lot line gives them that ability, and they are more than happy to live in that type of a home, on that type of a lot. So unless I hear anything that is completely new information that would really sway a decision, I don't see why there would be reason for me not to approve this, and I'd be supporting this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Lowry. Move on to Councilor Loyens, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just two things for clarification. Councilor Laurie had mentioned that even for zero lot lines, they still have to go through the whole permitting process to get approved for it. It's not a guarantee that they get the zero lot line. Did I hear that right, or am I missing something? Sorry, I apologize.
So for clarity, it's the process tonight. If this didn't have zero lot line product in it, this would have been approved by the Development Authority. We wouldn't even see it. So anything that's zero lot line based on our land use bylaw has to come to council.
Okay. Appreciate that. And then my second point of clarification is when it comes down to parking, right? It's one thing we really actually haven't touched on. And we already know, whether it be duplexes or standalone homes or anything like that, parking is always an issue, and it will continue to be an issue wherever it goes. So my question is, with these potential 31 homes, and we'll just say, for easy numbers, each house has one and a half cars. Is there going to be enough space on street parking for these homes to have 1.5 cars?
Okay, so Councilor Loyens, again, these houses are built to the standards that we have for R5, which means they have to have 2 parking spots provided for on property. So it's either garage pad or 2 in the garage. We do not consider on-street parking as a requirement, and they can't use that in the calculations. It has to be provided on the property.
Okay.
Will people use it as parking? That's a different question. We can't regulate that. That is their private property.
Okay, so then on a different note, what would the road width be, as then we talked in Brickyard about the width of the road for street parking accommodations? Is there going to be accommodations made on West Terra Wind for street parking?
From what I see on the pictures, there's no restrictions in parking on West Terra Bend, Wind. Administration?
Through your worship to Councilor Loyens, one of the things that we looked at when we were developing the zero lot lines section in land use bylaw was implications where there's zeros on both sides of the road. So one of the regulations we have in Stony Plain is that you can only have zero lot lines on one side, therefore ensuring that there is the opportunity to have on-street parking on one side of the road. Also, some things we have looked at with this is with the road kind of going east-west on the very south side, there's an entire lot depth there, 2 lot depths actually, of additional parking for on-street. And again, with this just being off the boulevard, all of the additional boulevard itself usually is pretty empty in terms of on-street parking.
Okay. I accept that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When zero lot lines first came through, I was quite a vocal critic or concerned councillor, if you will, and that continues to be the case. When I first saw this come in for first reading, initially had a lot of questions, a lot of concern. I think doing some review, hearing this evening about some of the delays in South Creek and so on, Councillor Laurie mentioned it, but 11 homes in the first or stage 17 of West Terra here really doesn't give us much of an idea about how zero lot lines will work in our community. I feel like it's too small of a sample size for us to really get an indication as to how it's going to impact the neighborhood, how it's going to impact the provision of services, garbage pickup, snow removal, and so on. One of the things that I appreciate about what we're looking at here is that they're all front drive access. And so we're not, having a narrow street where everything's rear access. People are using the front of the street to try to park, and we're trying to fit all of the extra vehicles. I think, there's some consideration there that I really appreciate. I appreciate that it's the same subdivision. We're not looking in a new area, but I also think it's timely, and I believe this has been spoken to by my councillors as well. But to make an informed decision, I think we need to be realistic in having an area of our community where, we've kind of given it the old college try, so to speak, that, you know, we've allowed sort of that area to develop out and to grow with our residents, to see how those aerial lot lines are going to impact our community in whatever way that may take us. And I may be, you know, pleasantly surprised in that and in how it's received and what that looks like. And the flip side, it may confirm some of my concerns, but we won't know until we have the opportunity to see that happen. And so as has been shared, I think I'll echo Councillor Laurie in that unless the wisdom of my colleagues on council, to borrow words from Councillor Hansard, would certainly support this evening. You know, I believe I see some serious thought from the developer going into this. I think there were some considerations that council offered at first reading and last year when our first zero lot line developments came through. And I think I can see that here in what's being proposed. And so foregoing any other discussion, will be supportive here of moving this forward.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Hansard, since we're going around the second time now, go ahead.
We're going the second time. I get spurred to speak again when my colleagues speak, and I think, well, that's terrific, but let's clarify. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Meyer and any others, we need to get rid of the idea that this has been a rush job or that we're being rushing into this. There's absolutely nothing on the face of the earth that is rush about earth moving and planning even a phase of a subdivision. The only way companies that do this stay alive is because they put a lot of effort years in advance, decades sometimes, buying the land, acquiring the land, and waiting for the right moment to begin to develop the land, waiting for growth to reach that particular area, whatever the case may be. And then the process when they begin to say we need to move on this and create some lots so homes can be built is not even just months. It's a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, sometimes more than that. And certainly in the case of this area, that is what's happened here. So there's absolutely nothing rush about it. It's the next phase. It's like, in my mind, you set out to have a Christmas tree. You go and chop down a tree or buy an artificial tree or whatever. And most of us don't even do it all in one night. We get it positioned like we want, make sure it's secure, and maybe put the lights on one night. Then we layer on the decorations. That's very much like what's happened here. You don't just do it in a hurry, and council is not being rushed, and the people of Stony Plain are not being rushed. But I'll tell you who wishes it was rushed is those people who are trying to find adequate housing. We have a housing shortage. And I can tell you from my other career that we don't have enough homes. We don't even have enough rentals to put people in. And we're expecting a huge influx of immigration into our area because the jobs are coming out of the woodwork and things are picking up again. We have a lot of enemies trying to stop that from happening, but it's going to happen anyway. And they have to be ready. If they don't do it, who is? So I would suggest that when we have a willing partner, somebody who's proven themselves to us, let's be supportive and do our part, and then we get to sit in judgment. Yes, we get to sit in judgment. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, that was not, that was just a comment based on your comment, so you can come back and raise your hand later after you like. I have some comments of my own later, so we'll go over there. Councillor Plechko.
Thank you, Your Worship. As I sit here tonight and listen to all of the things, and as I come through the door this morning, after reading and watching last council where we approved Stage 17 and South Creek. I do really appreciate Qualico coming to the table and talking about what it is that they're thinking of doing within our community. And I know when I first got on council, the lack of development in this town always concerned me. You know, we do have one major landowner, and that is Qualico. And I appreciate that you are here for the best interests of our community. But I also wonder why, at times, we sit back and we don't look to the future. So what I'm thinking today is I'm very excited to see Qualico wanting to do things. While we can speculate on what Qualico has told us today, whether they will or will not do South Creek, the reality is it's approved. It could happen tomorrow morning, and it can happen in a year. They could push the pencil tomorrow morning and find out that it actually does make sense to make that, which is good because we do need the development within our community. And when I look at the actual numbers for all three of them developments, we're talking 71 units. It's not a very large portion of what is in our community, but it's 71 more homes that we open the door for opportunities for people to come to the community, young and old, that may use this. So I think it's a really good idea when we sit up here today, we look at all the facts. And the facts are, we have two developments that are in place, both with 0 lot lines. We have a finished development, which Councillor Laurie referred to, and if you watch the minutes, he did ask why that wasn't part of the thing. So I think, today, and I made mention that it was nice to see because it helped to answer what we were going to see for a completed project. So really, at the end of the day, I think what we need to see is our developers, when they come to our community, come with open minds, knowing that council is going to do what we need to do for the best of our community and the best of the development within the community. I truly believe that this development will finish and be built out within a few years, and I do believe wholeheartedly that Qualico will at some point in time develop South Creek, and I do hope that you do what you say you're going to do today with the other lots that are at that South Creek portion and move that forward so that they can be sold as well, which gives our home, our community, a possibility of multi-dwellings in it, ranging from 0 lot lines all the way up to the bigger lots. So we still have a nice mix within our community. And like we know for most people is we don't want that built in our community. We'd like to see it, but we don't want it built in our back door. Well, unfortunately, when you buy a home, don't matter where you buy a home, you know that development will happen around you. And that is something that is just the way life goes. It usually does not change the fact that our homes are still worth a lot of money. It does not change the fact that we have a shortage in housing. And it does not change the fact that people will buy homes tomorrow morning. So unless I hear something different from the rest of my council members, I think tonight I've heard that it's a good addition to our community. It makes us diverse. And I truly believe it gives us an opportunity to see a subdivision fully developed. And I look forward to that. And I look forward to our developer building the quality developments that they have come to be known for in our community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Pashko. Any other comments, questions, for clarity and understanding, and debate before I have mine? Go ahead, Councilor Meyer, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And so just for clarification to the idea that we're rushing into this, I don't doubt that it does take time to put this all together. What I'm referring to is I don't want to be rushed without the example that we were waiting to see. There's the work that we have to do, which is the wait and see, let it build out, and then determine if it's good or bad for the community. That's what I don't want to be rushed into. And to my fellow councillors' point, they could, for whatever reason, decide that tomorrow South Creek does make sense. And then what we started off as just a small bite, a taste and see kind of thing, will be whatever, the 71 or whatever the number is. They might come back and say, well, for this next phase, we need another bit of approval. And in that approval, we'll maybe possibly approve some more zero lot lines. And that's just speculation, so that's not really necessarily fair to say, but what we're doing is we're getting eaten little bite by little bite here, and that I don't want to characterize as necessarily a bad thing, but to Councillor Laurie's point, why didn't we see the whole build-out initially? Maybe because we wouldn't have approved it at that point. I mean, certainly the debate tonight is not nearly as contentious as it was when we approved stage 17. So all I'm saying, and I'm not saying that this is good or bad, I'm saying I haven't seen any evidence to say it's good or bad, and that's what I'm waiting for.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for clear understanding? Debate? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for a second chance here. I want to pick up on something Councillor Loyens had asked, and I actually didn't hear a response, and I tried to do a little search here, but haven't been able to find the information I'm looking for, and that's specific to road width. So when we're looking at developments, what regulates the width of the road that's going into a development such as the one we're looking at in stage 18?
Okay. Thank you. Administration can provide the commentary if it's a local collector or a arterial road, please.
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, the width of the road is going to be determined, as the mayor indicated a little bit, local, minor collector, major collector, or arterial. It's based upon the demand that the either housing, I guess, or businesses would generate on that based upon those uses. In this case, the road is a local road. I'm trying to remember offhand, I believe it's an 18-meter road right-of-way that has I think it's a 9.5 meter, but it might be larger than that in terms of the curb to curb. Again, this is something I'd have to look up at the standards specifically, but again, it's designed to have parking on both sides and a drive aisle ultimately. Again, winter, whatnot, it can be quite tight, but ultimately it is designed to fit the needs of the area with parking and traffic accommodation.
Good.
Thank you for that. Just a couple of quick questions. One, to confirm what I heard, and second, to clarify, you had said you might need to look up those requirements. So the first there is, where are you going to look? Is that something that we establish as a municipality? Is that something that is a provincial standard or otherwise? And then the second question is just to clarify what I heard in that designed to have parking on both sides and so singular, drive lane in between the parking. Would that be correct?
Your worship to Councillor Anderson, that is correct. My colleague here, Ms. McDonald, did bring up our municipal development standards, which are standards that our engineering department does put together based on national standards. Again, in this case, a local collector does have that 9.5 meter curb to curb. That does include that does again include parking areas as well as the drive aisles there. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any more questions for understanding, comment, debate? Okay, see none. Administration just looking at the P3 that'll be constructed if this phase is approved. In terms of taking water away from the southern part of a community, is that efficient enough to make sure that the houses that will be built on stage 18 not get flooded out that back onto the environmental reserve?
Through your worship, thank you for the question. So similar to when we were in the previous approval for stage 17, at this stage we are currently in the planning phase. But just a general comment, drainage is a forthwith concern for this developer and the town's administration, and the plans that put forward consider in the P3 for the continuation of the drainage utility that you've outlined in your question there. There are other considerations that come out after this stage that we work with the developer on the detailed design. ensuring that all the requirements were related to the wetland as well as the drainage expectations within the municipal development standards are adhered to. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay, so let me ask that question again. So in terms of the permanent disturbance, which means back sloping, and the open access drainage ditch that goes to West Terra Drive and flows underneath West Terra Drive and goes to the open space on the other side of the rink, that is enough to prevent any of the houses that are built on stage 18 backing onto the environmental reserve from flooding.
To your worship and all of council, the space that is indicated that is P3 is wide enough to accommodate the swale there. The area that is shown as P1, I guess, is what you would consider kind of the buffer between the residential areas and that, and it is sloped accordingly. Again, this is information that is indicated by the General Manager of Planning and Infrastructure. Upon, pending we get your approval tonight and the developer proceeds with this, it would go to subdivision, and subsequent during the detailed engineering phase, we would see the detailed information that would clarify or provide details on what area would show that. But yes, there is no flooding potential on these lots given the fact that there is the buffer area provided by the P1, not necessarily the P3, but the P3 would allow the drainage of the wetland through the area in stage 17 that is also P3 through the drainage swale northward. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. A couple more points here, just a fact check, clarity. So there are not, if this stage 18 gets approved, there are not 71 zero lot line houses that have been approved in Town Swain Plain. There will be only 60. There's 11 in stage 17, 29 on stage 5 of South Creek. And if the council does approve, there's another 20 on stage 18, so that's only 60, not 71. So make sure that's, so when we talk, we have the right numbers. I just want to address the thing about, well, this feels rushed. And I think I can guarantee you that the developer does not feel this is rushed. Actually, they have felt that the town of Stoney Plain has held them back. So being around the table quite a few years, the developer first approached the town of Stoney Plain of doing zero lot lines about 6 to 7 years ago. We've held firm in that we wanted to see how other municipalities are holding it so that we did not rush into this fact. And only last year, when we approved the new land use bylaw, that we did allow for zero lot lines. So that was 5 years in the making. Stoney Plain did not rush to go forward. We watched what happened in Beaumont, what happened in Spruce Grove, what happened in Leduc, what happened in Fort Saskatchewan, and what happened in St. Albert before we even changed our land use bylaw to allow zero lot lines. Okay. So we did not rush this, and I do not feel that this is being rushed to the developer. As I mentioned, the developer thinks that we've held them back in terms of development in our community. Another point is that there's some talk about being a pilot project. As council recalls, when we did and debated the land use bylaw, we chose not to put the word pilot project in this. We approved wholeheartedly to zero lot lines within the town of Stoney Plain. But we added a caveat that council wanted to see where it's going to go first so that we have an idea, which actually increased more red tape. And that is why we're here again. Under the zoning on R5, it does allow zero lot lines. It allows narrow lots. But if they want zero lot lines, it has to come back for council approval. So hopefully in the future, as mentioned by Deputy Mayor, when more of these building products get built, council and our community can see more of it, and maybe at that point in time, council can change that land use bylaw to allow that without coming to council, based on a certain percentage or certain kind of requirements. But right now, we have prevented them from going ahead because we have not rushed into this. Okay. In terms of what I see in terms of the environmental perspective, I do see that there is a little issue there in terms of water rights and water removal. Having the approval from the Water Act kind of rest assures that the developer has done their job and the government of Alberta has reviewed it and approved it. As I asked earlier, this is a similar process that we are doing in terms of our pathway between Stony Plain and Spruce Grove. We have to follow the Water Act, ask for permission. We go through all the process of evaluating what we're disturbing, why we're disturbing it, and the government decides yes or no. So I've received some comments regarding that. I've reviewed it, and I do not think it's an issue here because there's enough policies in place to make sure that it is protected. We don't see the large amounts of the environmental reserve because that's not part of this phase. Right? It is currently zoned future development on the west side of stage 18. So for us to address it, a little premature because we can't control that because it's not coming for zoning. Okay. You know what? At the beginning, when we started talking about zero lot lines about 6 years ago, I was not in favor of zero lot lines because I've heard some of the stories of other communities. Council has made it very clear that we do not want to see the same occurrences that we're having in other municipalities of neighbor disputes, the ability to provide efficient services, and that's why we've been cautious about allowing how many go through and how it's developed. Okay. The majority of the issues that I heard was that the municipalities that rushed into it allowed an entire subdivision to be zero lot lines. That was the issue. We have that many people in the area. But us having the ability to control how many goes in there allows us to monitor and make sure that we do maintain that small town feel where we know our neighbors and we're friendly. We're not fighting for green space. We also heard that there's different types of housing that we need. So back November 2nd, the MRB put together a housing symposium after about 6 years. I believe the majority of council was there, and we heard that we do have a shortage of housing. Right? We have a shortage of obtainable housing and affordable housing. Because not every housing option is right for everyone. Right? Some people can afford an estate lot. Some people have to afford a narrow lot, and others have condos. So that having that option and seeing this come forward, that there is actually 3 types of housing units here on stage 18. There's 2 R2 units, and then the rest are R5, 20 of them which are zero lot lines, and the other 17 are single family. So again, providing that mix of housing options for residents, because not every housing option is right for a resident. Okay. We also heard that there's going to be an increase in immigration, and that was well spoken and articulated at the housing symposium. With the government of Alberta's calling campaign, it's working. We have the highest net migration from the other provinces ever last year. And with the federal government's opening up the immigration laws and regulations, we expect another 2 million people coming into Canada. So we need to be able to have those housing options ready for them. Okay. And there's some commentary about South Creek. I have no concerns about South Creek not going ahead. During the public hearing, we made it very clear that they had 2 options. If we approved it, and we did approve stage 5, which allowed for 29 zero lot lines, that they could not do stage 4B because there's only one access in and out of South Creek. Right? During the presentation, they said they wanted to look at this because if they're able to do this and it has to be budget, that they'd be south of the pond, which then allows them an easier access to connect to Veterans Boulevard. We heard they did the numbers, budget crunch, and did not make sense. So they will be connecting, maybe doing stage 4B, but they cannot do stage 5 until they get the secondary connection out of South Creek. So that might be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I don't know. But it's not like we're having all the zero lot lines built right away after this approval. Yeah. So in terms of that, I think I understand because this is a kind of a new product for us and there is a little bit of angst and we have not seen how it works. But based on my recollection of how we pushed back to our builders about not allowing zero lot lines until now, gives me the assurance that we made sure that we watched what happened in other communities so that we do not repeat the same mistakes. So based on all those, what I've thought about, what I've seen in our community, what I've seen in other communities, I will be supporting the motion. Councilor Pletchko, would you like to close? Would you like to close?
Motion? No, I have nothing to say.
Okay. With that, then I'll call the motion. All in favor of second reading? Opposed? Okay, moving on to third reading. Councilor Hansard, please.
Your worship, I move that town council give third reading to bylaw 2683 LUO 24.
Thank you. Members of council, we had the presentations tonight. We had some comments, some questions, and some debate. Any other comments, questions, and debate on third reading? Councilor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your commentary, you had mentioned something that really sort of piqued my interest, and that was the developer in some ways being held back by certainly the decisions that have been made at the table. And on one hand, I certainly appreciate council and previous councils taking the time to ensure decisions that are made in the best interest of our municipality. I think that's very, very important. The one thing that I do want to note is, we certainly don't want our developers to believe we're working against them, but that it truly is working in the best interest of our community and hearing from our residents and what they're looking forward to and truly doing our due diligence. The one thing I had noted and was just that I think we need to find a path forward that allows us to reduce the red tape without or while, I guess, minimizing the potential impacts of some of these things. And so certainly discussion for council as we move forward and we look at our land use bylaw even later this evening. But want to just thank our developer for sticking with us as we have been on the journey to discover and determine what we believe is in the best interest of the municipality here. And I'll often tell my students that on every adventure, on every journey, we hit little speed bumps sometimes, and we just don't want to back up and hit the same one too many times. But this, I think, is a step forward this evening, and appreciate Jamie and team for being on the journey with us. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Any number of comments, debate on third reading? See none. Thank you for your comments, and those are good words to close by. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. We're looking at that. So let's take a recess, and we'll come back to do 8.2 after this. Thank you. All right, members, council, administration, welcome back. Continuing on with our agenda. Moving on to 8.2 is the land use bylaw update, 2024 for first reading. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. This is item 8.2 on your agenda. First reading for bylaw 2686 LUO 24, the land use update 2024. This slide shows the land use planning framework within the town of Stony Plain. So the segment of the planning framework that we're here to discuss tonight is the land use bylaw. The land use bylaw defines the rights for uses of property, building setbacks, heights, and locations. Just a brief history of the administrative updates that have been taking place to the land use bylaw. There was one done in 2021. Later in that year, there were some amendments in order to implement cannabis legislation and legalization in the province. In 2022, we began a more concrete method of bringing annual administrative updates. In 2022, there was a housing strategy policy piece, which was implemented as well as an administrative update. 2023 saw another administrative update, and again this year, the updates are largely administrative in nature. Here's a brief overview of the changes. I will dive into each one in a little bit more depth, but generally speaking, there were some consolidations with respect to projections in the various different residential commercial zones. There were some additions made with respect to planning bylaw notice signs, which results from the implementation of a new public advertisement bylaw from the town, and some of the definition sections were updated. I would also note that consultation was done with UDI and CHBA, as well as neighboring municipalities to provide opportunity for comment. So getting into the changes in a little bit more detail, there are many applications that administration sees which could be deemed more than one use. So this practice is already taking place, by which the Development Authority would deem the most appropriate for the site. However, this is being formalized in the bylaw. Application timelines have been adjusted to a discretionary timeline, which would be administered by the Development Authority, and provides greater flexibility for applicants in order to, provide them with more time to complete their application requirements. Education services were added to the P1 district, and there were some changes made to education services with respect to being permitted or discretionary in commercial districts. There was some unnecessary red tape here for use which really presents minimal impact to nearby or adjacent land uses. Some clarification was provided in the accessory development section to specify the distance setback required from a principal building. There was also clarification provided on the applicability of sightline triangles to intersecting lanes rather than just intersecting lanes and roadways. Several definitions were updated, largely administratively, just to ensure best practices and clarity. However, there were also some new definitions added, being indoor and outdoor entertainment. Planning bylaw notice signs were added to the land use bylaw, as well as residential vehicle storage. As I previously mentioned, projections have now been consolidated into one general regulation section rather than specified in each district, and then some of the projection limitations have been aligned across different residential districts. A new section was also added with respect to planning bylaw notice signs in order to facilitate the introduction of a new public advertisement bylaw. This section will allow administration to enforce and provide some controls around the operation of the signs. And cannabis retail sales, there was a clarification added to those uses which are subject to the separation distance requirement. When new cannabis retail businesses open in town, there's a setback distance requirement from certain uses, and that has now been clarified. So that's all that we have for this evening. Provided council gives first reading to this bylaw, administration will proceed with advertisement for a public hearing, which is tentatively scheduled for March 11th. And we welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you for your presentation and the update to the land use bylaw. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Again, this is just for clarity and understanding. There is no debate on this, as we're going to for public hearing, and we'll be reviewing this on March 11th. Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one quick comment and then one question for administration. So through you, first of all, I appreciate seeing the component in regards to education in there. I know we'd had a couple come through that we had some questions on, and so it's good to see that that's being dealt with. I just have a question in regards to the feedback received by UDI, the Urban Development Institute. The feedback, it seems like most of that feedback does not actually apply to the changes that have been presented. It's more about changes they'd like to see throughout our land use bylaw in general. When would we be looking at opening our land use bylaw up again to consider some of these changes?
Through your worship to Councillor Laurie. That's correct. Most of the conversation with UDI was around things that they would like to see, hopefully in the future. They do understand that we did make a fairly large shift with the housing implementation in the land use bylaw 2 years ago, and there is some understanding there that, you know, council at the time did not want to approve those recommendations for lot width reduction as the administration had proposed, and so we're looking to integrate that slowly into the community. It's an ongoing conversation, I guess, is what I'd say, with our development partners about what's appropriate for the town and when, and it's something we're continually interested in having discussion with them about.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Councillor Hansford?
I just wanted to more or less state publicly that I appreciated the Urban Development Institute's 8 points that they brought forward. I found myself pondering what those mean, and I do think it would remove a lot of angst on the part of people when somebody comes in, especially new houses, and they now want bigger decks, or they want to put the decks where they maybe get a little bit closer. There were any number of things that I thought were helpful. I made a note in particular about number 7. Could you explain what is meant here when they suggested projections into yards, decks, balconies, suggest allowing for 2.5 meter projection into the front yard for decks and balconies? Was that in any way to address the creation of or the promotion of verandas on the front of homes?
Go ahead, Minister Fisher.
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard. I don't know if they're speaking to verandas. I can tell you that verandas or, paving stones, something of that nature in the front yard would be considered landscaping, which doesn't require development approval, isn't considered a projection into a setback, would simply just be allowed.
Okay.
For clarification, Mr. Mayor, when I say veranda, I'm talking front porch, part of the actual dwelling. They would have to have permission to extend out from the actual proper dimensions of the home. Is that a yes or no?
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard. So thank you for the clarification. If the height is of a certain height, then yes, permits will be required. We're confident that based on the setbacks that exist currently, I'll draw one, for example. There's often a 3 meter setback from the front lot line. Projecting further into that 3 meters, we did not feel was necessary, but for some of the districts with more substantial front setback, perhaps 7.5, the projecting into that setback requirement is appropriate. But when we have a setback of 3 meters, really the allowance to project into that isn't quite required. There's plenty of space working within that 3 meter setback.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Hansford, thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Anderson? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We spoke a while back about a development just on the edge of Veterans Boulevard there, and one of the questions that came up for me was around the allowance of 25 meter build height in the R8 and C3 districts. Just 2 quick questions here. One, looking for, again, refresh my memory, I know you had answered it at that time, but how many stories realistically with 25 meters could we expect that to be? And then number 2, just for maybe some clarity and an explanation on why 25 meters was the chosen height for those 2 areas specifically.
Okay, go ahead.
Through your worship to Councillor Anderson, typically the 25 meters is approximately 6 stories. Again, it depends on how, I guess, large or how tall each story is. You might be able to fit a 7-story in there if you have smaller ones. The reason why we chose this in particular is when the land use bylaw was being redone about 2015, there was a lot of interest in, I believe it was stick-built 6-story units. We previously had the Meridian, the B&G Manor, Barth and Goth Manor was being built in Stony Plain. It was 5 stories in height. So we kind of looked at that and said, you know, that's reasonable. We wanted to allow a little additional flexibility in addition to that. So again, 6 was kind of determined to be reasonable. There was lots of back and forth between if you just have stories, well, is someone going to bump each story and make it a little bit taller? So it really didn't define in a solid state sort of what 6 stories was, so we went with direct meters in terms of a height for each of them. So that's what translated into the 25 meters.
Perfect, and a follow-up if I may. Yeah, thank you for that. You used the term stick-built. I'm going to make an assumption that that's speaking to wood-framed construction. I see some nods, and so if that's the case, I know there was a conversation at that time around some different building codes for wood frame structures that are over 4 stories, I believe. And so just looking maybe for just some really quick understanding as to the building code requirements there around wood frame buildings over 4 and up to 6 stories.
Through your worship, through Councillor Anderson, you're correct. By stick-built, I did mean wood-framed homes. Again, I'm not a safety code officer, but my understanding is at the time, the codes were changed to enable 6 as allowable, as opposed to previously it was limited to 4 stories. So again, that was to kind of match that and enable that within Stony Plain.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Okay. And then prior to the Alberta Safety Codes updates, and it used to be a 4-story was stick-built. Anything above 4 stories had to be either metal or concrete. And they've changed that now so that stick-built can be up to 6 stories now.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for clear understanding? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to the application timelines and the greater flexibility, I'm just a touch confused because I often hear so often developers and the like are looking for increasing, shortened timelines in regard to permit application. I'm just curious, with the flexibility, will we see that number drop? Will it shorten or lengthen?
Through your worship to Councillor Meyer, I don't believe it will shorten or lengthen. So what this change is referring to is an applicant preparing their materials to form a complete application. And then the timeline for permit issuance is typically what we talk about from a complete application to time of issuance. So that timeline shouldn't change. What's being changed is that instead of a maximum of 30 days to provide, it could be studies or any other supplementary information, we can now extend that timeline if the applicant needs more time to provide additional information.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I'll just piggyback on that good question, Deputy Mayor. So in terms of the 30-day time frame, how many occurrences have we had that had required an extension of 30 days?
Through you to your worship, I don't have a statistic for you, a comprehensive number over a certain time period. I can tell you anecdotally, in my experience, it's the majority of the time we are finding that we require another piece of information and we need to give the applicant some time to collect the materials.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Okay. I have a question in terms of the addition of residential vehicle storage. I know there's a description on there. So I think my question is, for example, if I'm part of a condo association, maybe right here, and we decided to buy a piece of land in West Terra, can I make that a residential vehicle storage because I'm a condo. I'm going to be storing our condos' vehicles there.
Through your worship, to all of council, the intention of the recreational vehicle storage was, we have certain instances in Stony Plain already where there's either a homeowner association or a condominium where they have either a portion of, say, their common property, or in some cases like the homesteads, there's actually a lot that has been purchased or retained by the homeowner association by which they have recreational vehicle storage as kind of a perk of being part of that association. Really, when we looked at it, we didn't see a challenge or a problem in terms of having them. So we wanted to make sure that, as one of the kind of underlying philosophical reasons we make changes, is that it removes any of those implications or it makes things compliant. So again, this is just to make sure that if there was something in the future, we have had a couple of proposals since those ones were done, or similar ones in the past. If someone wanted to come in, propose a condo association, and then leave some of the area towards that, we actually have a use class that enables it, as opposed to something that we would have to fidget around or maybe even deny because it wouldn't be allowed technically. So.
Okay, so then just want some clarification then. So as a condo association, I can't buy a lot 3 doors down from my condo association to house this, or can I?
I think part of the purpose of having it is it would have to be adjacent to or part of that parcel. So I would say probably not, but again, it is something that we might have some discretion to be able to see the circumstances for each specific case. I don't want to give you a specific no. Again, if there's a circumstance by which it's an alleyway, it's nearby, it makes sense, and it is something that would not harm the adjacent lots, I think it might be possible. And this here would enable it as a possibility. But again, the intent is that it would be generally adjacent to or part of that parcel of land.
Okay. Then my second question to that is then, are there any current zoning districts that would allow that without having to put into residential classification? So my thought is, we just saw a subdivision here, stage 18. What if a condo association was split up into residential, but then one chunk is left as FD or future development or utility or M2 to allow parking? Because my worry is that if we allow residential vehicle storage on all residential classifications, then if I own a lot, that means I can, without the town's approval, put a residential storage on that.
To your worship, certainly something that we've considered is the potential for this use class to be leveraged as like a commercial venture for someone in a temporary storage lot. I think that's where you're going there. Certainly a concern that we had, and we believe that the way that we've structured it and specifically crafted the definition makes it explicit that it's not for a commercial purpose. This would be for collective usership based on one of those ownership styles that we talked about, being a homeowners association, a condo corp, or something similar, where the subdivision is developed with a homeowners association with the intent that one lot would be used by the residents for the residents, not as a commercial opportunity. And we're very conscious of that. And that's why it's been introduced as discretionary, and we would have oversight over, ensuring that it remains residential, serving the residents.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for clarity? Councillor Hansard.
I'm not sure I'm completely understanding. I actually had made a note of that as well. Does that allow an individual homeowner to have vehicle storage on their lot, such as RV, is that considered a vehicle? A work truck, a school bus, anything else? Because we've had neighborhoods where there's been lots of concerns about that type of thing. It seemed to me by allowing it to be discretionary that it could be a problem, through your worship, to planning.
Through your worship, to Councillor Hansard. So no, this doesn't enable those other type of ancillary or behavioral type functions that come with home ownership. This really I think the key word here is communal, right? So this has to be a certain ownership style where several lots or several condominiums are collaborating together to provide one location for their storage. We might be able to provide some information about existing ones that are already in operation in town when we come back for second and third reading, and maybe some graphics to demonstrate how this kind of looks and operates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for clear understanding? Councillor Laurie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking at the sightline triangle information that's on here. So we've had the addition of item C, where lane intersects with a lane, the site triangle is the area contained between, etc. And then there's a diagram on the following page, so it's page 285. UDI expresses in their letter some of the challenges that this may cause in the setback of garages. I'm just wondering if for second reading, can we have some better diagramming of that, some better just understanding so we can kind of see how that impacts those lots? And then the second question of clarity that I have on that is, in that sightline triangle, it doesn't allow for the construction of anything over a meter tall to be in that sightline triangle. But in a back lane, that typically would be a parking area, and most vehicles are taller than 1 meter. So if we're trying to retain a sightline triangle for intersection safety in a lane, if we're addressing any physical structures, how do we go further, or how do we understand if there is merit in doing that, if the reality is that's just going to be replaced by vehicles that will interrupt that sightline anyways? So I don't know if that's necessarily something that needs an answer tonight, but some more background and some more examples of that for the second reading would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Administration, can you answer it now or provide some feedback?
Certainly, through your worship to Councillor Laurie, I guess I'm reflecting on, I live in Edmonton, and the portion of Edmonton I live in, there's a few rear lanes, very similar to this, that have this site triangle actually employed. Also working with our engineering group, I know they typically don't like to allow rear accesses right on the corner of a lot where there's 2 lanes adjacent. So typically there would be, I guess, a restriction in terms of where an access would be off of a lot that is on the corner where 2 rear lanes are. Again, we can bring some additional information on this, but this is fairly typical in larger urban areas that already have, I guess, more examples of this than, say, a place like Stony Plain would.
Thank you. So, yeah, further to that, through your worship, some examples of what the sightline triangles are in adjacent municipalities so that we understand if we're consistent. And then I would like to see some examples. I'm a little worried about how this may limit the access for those lots that do occur where the lane intersections are. I'm thinking typically that occurs in areas where there's curves, you got pie-shaped lots, those lots end up straddling. With this sight line, if we have a rear lane product that's intended to have a rear garage, I'm kind of worried that we might actually eliminate the ability for them to have a rear garage on that property. So if we can have some more background on this for second reading with some comparisons and some examples, I'd appreciate that so we can get a better understanding of it.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly we will.
Any other questions for clear understanding? Okay, I'm just, Councilor, you had a hand up? Okay, I have a question regarding the signs. That's what they are. Signs. And currently, I think when we upgraded it, our bylaw, it is 21 days prior to a public hearing, but then 7 days right after. So that's the timeline that I read. But was there consideration given to leaving the signs up there until development is complete? I asked that question, being in other municipalities such as Vancouver, Victoria, Jasper, Banff, and even some subdivisions in Edmonton, is that when they apply for the rezoning of the subdivision, the sign is on there when that happens, and the sign's still on there after it's been approved, so that people that are looking for houses in that area or walking by, they have an understanding of what's going to happen there. You know, good things that we have a few people in our gallery, but a lot of time people's memories are very, very short. So, for example, we may finish West Terrace Stage 18. You can ask me tomorrow, I may not remember what happened in Stage 18, but if there was a sign there, every time I drive by, I know what's going to happen there.
To your worship, so some of the considerations there, one of the things that we often see with signs being left up for extended periods of time is some maintenance issues, do get complaints, it's common. The other thing to consider is, is the community being given not a falsehood, but, by leaving the sign up, the real intent of the sign was to allow them to understand when a public hearing was going to happen so that they could go have a say. And leaving the sign there without that ability for the public can have some perception issues. Also, too, one thing to consider, the time from rezoning, as we heard quite a bit tonight, from rezoning to an actual built home can be several years. So just understanding that nuance with the development community is not something that we explored, and it would be something that we would probably want to speak with them about before making any changes there.
Thank you. Any other questions for clear understanding? Okay. Nope, that's all I had as well, so thank you very much. I will call Councillor Anderson for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that, almost there. Town Council give first reading to bylaw 2686/LUO/24 to repeal land use bylaw 2671/LUO23 and adapt a new land use bylaw, and authorize administration to proceed with notification of a public hearing to be held on March 11th, 2024 for bylaw 2686/LUO/24.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Members of Council, is there any debate on the motion? Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. All right, moving along with the agenda. Moving on to number 9 is business items. We have nothing scheduled for tonight. So moving on to council discussion. So this is the time that we allow council members to update rest of council or members of administration or bring back questions or comments that they've heard in the public. Councillor Loynes.
I just want to say what a wonderful weekend it was doing the Winter in Bloom and raising money for the elevator in Spruce Grove on Saturday. Other than that, that was it.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Nothing this evening, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councillor Pletchko.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can surprise me sometimes what order you go in. Certainly want to recognize our protective service team this evening. Every time I hear a siren or see the lights flashing, we say a quick prayer for the team that's going out, but certainly talking about our emergency stand-up with the water issues. I know we've had a response to an incident on the tracks recently, but just really want to express gratitude and thanks to our protective services team for all they do to keep our community safe.
Thank you very much for raising that and bringing some gratitude for our staff. Councillor Hansard.
Your worship, I wanted to simply say that I wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day. I'm sure everybody's got a Valentine's in mind, even if it's your dog. But happy Valentine's Day, and if you're a guy, whatever you do, don't forget to give something to your wife or your partner for Valentine's Day, because she can make your life miserable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Well, I'm picking up on this attitude of gratitude, and so I would like to thank Councillor Hansard for reminding me that Wednesday is Valentine's Day. I'd also just like to thank all of council for fulsome discussion this evening on the agenda item, so appreciate that, and that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, just a couple FYI. Again, as mentioned by Councillor Hansard, this Wednesday is Valentine's Day, so make sure you say something nice to somebody special. If you have nobody special to say something nice to, I'm more than happy to take those praises. So if you want, I'll give you my contact number later. And also on February 19th is Family Day. a beautiful day to be out and about with your family. And also, this is a day that there's no requirements for a fishing license. So if you ever thought about maybe going ice fishing, you don't need a license on Family Day. So the family weekend is all free. And if you want to learn how to take that block of ice off your fishing hook, let me know. I can help you with that as well. But we usually try to go for fish, but a lot of people come back with ice. I'm not too sure, they don't understand ice fishing, but we're not really fishing for ice. And also on February 22nd, which is a Thursday, our MP Lloyd is in town, and he'll be giving a speech at the Chamber of Commerce for luncheon. So if anybody's available, please get your tickets through the Chamber and here to see what's happening on the federal front from our MP. Okay. With that, good work, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to have conversations and debate with members of council. And it's obvious that everybody took the time to read the agenda tonight so that we can come and share our thoughts and perspectives and what we hear from our community so that we can build our community as we see fit through our shared experiences and knowledge. Thank you. With that, we're adjourned. Have a good day.